Good afternoon, students. This week's Week 7 interactive lecture is going to be about how to write your comparison-contrast essay. Let's get started. As Kim and Tom explore comparison-contrast writing, let both of them know how well they've been doing so far. There are different ways to compare and contrast in an essay. Let's explore how that works. So, when you compare something, you talk about how things are the same, and when you contrast something, you talk about how things are not the same. Exactly. Think about pens and pencils. Both can write, but one uses ink and the other uses lead. Compare and contrast essays pose a special challenge in the Department of Organization. Luckily, there are a few different formulas you can use in order to present your information clearly and effectively. You can either present details one side at a time or point by point. And so when we do a comparison-contrast essay, we're comparing two similar things. Something is better or worse than something else, or something is as good as something else. And so there are two ways in which we can write a comparison-contrast essay. And so here your book calls one side at a time. I call it the block method. And here the book calls it point by point. I call it the alternate method. If you present details in a comparison-contrast essay, or one side at a time, you must first look at only one side of your argument. The other way to write a comparison-contrast essay would be to present information point by point. Click on the right button for examples of each. Use these examples to help you compose your discussion response. So that means that in your Week 7 forum, you can either write your outline as a point-by-point outline, if that's what you're going to use for your outline. And remember, point-by-point is just like a 5-paragraph essay structure, alternate method. One side at a time means that you're going to write about, first you write about one side in one paragraph, then you write about another side in another paragraph. And just as I told you in your Week 6 instructor session, if you're going to write about LA, is better than New York because of its food, because of its monuments, because of its beaches. Food, beaches, monuments. Then when you write one side at a time, you would write LA, food, beaches, monument. New York, food, beaches, monument. And you would have to write it in that order, and then you have to write 5 to 7 sentences of each paragraph. And you would end up with 4 paragraphs in a one side at a time block method way of writing. And it is shorter to write that way. And remember that each paragraph still needs to have 5 to 7 sentences. So if you're able to be, as I said all of this, same thing in the second half of the Week 6 instructor session. So if you're able to be concise, then I suggest you use the one side at a time method. If you tend to talk on and on like me, then you would use the point-by-point method, in which each point, food, culture, monuments, gets its own paragraph. That's the difference, okay? So here's an example of point-by-point. Kim practiced writing her essay using comparison-contrast. This is a portion of the essay. Note the word count as well. Compare and contrast. Minuses and plus of cat ownership versus dog ownership, point by point. Being a dog owner has its up and downs. Like a cat, dogs can be amused with the simplest things. Have you ever watched your dog chase its tail? The sight of watching a dog run round and round trying to catch its own tail, bonking into things and other objects, can make you laugh so hard you might fall over. Dogs may not get excited about cardboard boxes like cats can, but they can get pretty silly with their own tails. Just like your cat's independence might stress you out, so too can your dog when he or she gets sick. When that happens, the fear of losing your dog can tend to raise your stress levels. What can lower your stress is being able to pet your dog and watch as it slowly falls asleep with your gentle touch. Dogs may not purr like a cat when you pet them, but they do know how to lower your stress just like petting a cat can. So this comes out to 167 words. So here the person wrote their introduction, and then here they have their thesis statement, and then they wrote it point by point within this introduction. So that's point by point, one side at a time. So here, with one side at a time, first you write about the cat, then you write about the dog. So being a cat owner has its ups and downs. As a cat owner, you sometimes feel like you are still all alone because of your cat's fierce independence. This can put a little stress into your life, especially when your cat is out at all hours of the night. The positive side of being a cat owner is watching your cat play with the silliest objects like a cardboard box. When your cat plays like this, it can make you laugh hard, which is good for the mind and body. Another thing that is good for the mind and body is that when you pet your cat, your mood changes and you tend to calm down as you listen to your cat purring. So here the person talks first about their cat, then they talk about their dog. Being a dog owner also has its ups and downs. Have you ever watched your dog chase its tail? The sight of watching a dog run round and round, trying to catch its own tail, bonking into walls and other objects, can make you laugh so hard you might even fall over. The stressful side of dog ownership can be when it gets sick. When that happens, the fear of losing your dog can tend to raise your stress levels. What can lower your stress is being able to pet your dog and watch it as it slowly falls asleep with your gentle touch. So there are two ways in which you can write your comparison-contrast essay. You can either write it as a point-by-point, 5-paragraph essay type, or you can use the block method like this and write about one, and then you write about the other. Place the writing characteristics on their corresponding definitions. Both dogs and cats love to be pet. Although you can make a cat purr, the best you can do by petting a dog is to make it fall asleep. And so obviously this is point by point because they're talking about dogs and cats at the same time. And then when you have one side at a time, first you talk about cats, then you talk about dogs. This is known as the block method, or as your side by side, or one side at a time. Remember, these methods all have different names. So point by point can also be the alternate method, 5-paragraph essay structure. One side at a time can be known as one side at a time, side by side, or block method. Grammar concepts. And so the grammar concepts are exactly the same as what's on your week 7 quiz. So this is going to be a review of your week 7 quiz grammar concepts. Remember, we talked about misplaced modifiers. So if you already watched my Zoom video, you know that misplaced modifiers is when you're missing the subject. For example, while working, the earthquake shook the building. So the earthquake is not going to be working. So therefore, that's incorrect. That's a misplaced modifier. Oh, excuse me, that's a dangling modifier. Yeah, so a dangling modifier is when you're missing a subject. A misplaced modifier is when you have to move the modifier in order to make a correct sentence. He watches just one television station. Then you have to move it to he watches only one television station. Or the new employee in the front office is taking the front office wearing new clothes, wearing brand new clothes. And obviously your office is not going to wear brand new clothes, so it's supposed to be the employee wearing the brand new clothes takes the front office. So when you have to move around the modifier, that's known as a misplaced modifier. A misplaced modifier creates confusion because the modifier is not located near the word it is trying to describe. The mayor chided the pedestrians for jaywalking angrily. Okay, so you're going to walk angrily? No, the mayor chided angrily the pedestrians for jaywalking. So here, the word angrily should go after the word chided. So when you have to correct a sentence by moving the modifier around, that's known as a misplaced modifier. A dangling modifier is a modifier that is unclear in intent. This is a descriptive word that does not describe what the author wanted it to do. After singing a thrilling ballad, the crowd surged towards the stage. So did the audience sing the thrilling ballad, or did the singer or the actress sing the ballad? So here, after the actress sang her song, her thrilling ballad, the crowd surged towards the stage. And so when you have a dangling modifier, you're missing who's doing the singing. It's not the audience, unless you're at church, right? So here, in a dangling modifier, you're missing the subject. And whatever it's modifying, it's not modifying what it's supposed to be modifying. And I remember saying in the, so here, after singing, after the actress was singing her thrilling ballad, then you have the crowd surge toward the stage. So dangling modifier means you're missing something. A misplaced modifier means you have to move the modifier in another position in order to make the sentence correct. And then we talked about sentence fragments in my Zoom video as well. This is all for your week 7 quiz on sentence structure. A run-on sentence occurs when 2 or more independent clauses are joined without a punctuation mark or a coordinating conjunction. So remember that there are 2 kinds of run-on sentences. You have a comma splice. So I resent my parents. They force me to become something I don't want. And then you don't have a period next to it. You have no punctuation whatsoever. And so when you have no punctuation, like you forget your period, then you have 2 sentences that run into each other. So in that case, that's you can either have a comma splice or a fused sentence. So if you use a comma unnecessarily and you run 2 sentences together, like I went to bed, comma, I snore. Okay, after I went to bed, you're supposed to put a period there. You're not supposed to put a comma after I went to bed. So that's called a comma splice. And you can correct that by putting I went to bed, comma, and I snore. So you can correct that sentence with a fanboys, with a coordinating conjunction. See, so you correct the run-on sentence either with a punctuation mark or a coordinating conjunction, like fanboys, for, nor, and, but, or, yet, so. So here's an example of a run-on sentence. A television addict is dependent on TV. I have suffered this addiction for years. Okay, here you're missing a period. So now you have a run-on sentence that is 2 sentences that run together. And therefore this is an incorrect sentence. It's like a sentence fragment. And so here you need a period. A television addict is dependent on television, period. Then I have suffered this addiction for years. Or, as we discussed in our Zoom session, we could put in a transition word. We could put a semicolon here. Therefore, I have suffered this addiction for years. Okay, so either put in a coordinating conjunction and, or put in a transition word in addition, therefore, moreover. But whatever it is, you're missing something over here. So that is known as a run-on sentence. Which one doesn't have a correct grammar? The press reacted to the story leaked from Pentagon with horror. While creating a work of art, the child spilled paint on the floor. The cashier worked for almost 10 hours today. So let's take a look at these sentences to see which one is wrong and which one is correct. Here you have a simple sentence. Subject, the cashier, worked, verb, for almost 10 hours a day, prepositional phrase. And as I went over in the Zoom session, that's known as a simple sentence. Subject, verb, prepositional phrase is a simple sentence, just like the house is down the hill. Down the hill is the house. I guess I've said my week 7 lesson so many times that I know it by heart. Just those sentences just come out of my head. While creating a work of art, the child spilled paint on the floor. This is correct. So who is creating the work of art? It's the child. And so in this case, the modifier correctly modifies the subject in the sentence. So there is no dangling modifier mistake in this sentence. So this sentence is correct. It's not like while working, the earthquake shook the building. Oh, is the earthquake the one that's working? No. Then you have to have while working, while I was working, the earthquake shook. So here, while creating a work of art, or while the child was creating a work of art, either ways. So it's the same thing. While creating a work of art, the child spilled paint on the floor. Or while the child was creating a work of art, she or he spilled paint on the floor. Either way, this modifier modifies child. So this is a correct sentence. Let's go to this one. The press reacted to the story leaked from the Pentagon with horror. The Pentagon is a building in Washington, D.C. So can the building Pentagon suddenly have a face that looks in horror with something? So suddenly the building is going to grow eyes and a nose and a mouth and go, oh, I don't think so. So obviously this is what kind of is this a dangling modifier or is this a misplaced modifier? Obviously, this is a misplaced modifier because you would say that the press reacted to the story with horror, not the Pentagon building. It's a bunch of people working for the newspaper. They're the ones that are horrified by something. So therefore, the press with horror reacted to this story leaked from the Pentagon. That's the correct. So this is a misplaced modifier because you have to put the modifier someplace else in order for this to be correct. And so for your week 7 quiz, you have to be able to tell the difference between a dangling modifier error and a misplaced modifier error, and you have to know the difference between those two. And when I was teaching the week 7 quiz prep, that was the hardest part for my students, that we had to do it twice, the second time, simply because they could not understand the difference between dangling modifiers and misplaced modifiers. Submit. Correct. So let's get on to the next. That's it. Okay, so that's the end of your week 7 interactive lesson. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me.